Good afternoon, everyone, and most welcome to H792. We are approaching the marvelous 800. What a treat! This is fantastic. I will today talk about time and reincarnation. And this is an old fellow that's going to participate in 2 lectures. And that is the quite remarkable scientist and researcher, incredibly good speaker, interesting personality, and Shakespeare reciter, Mr. Julian Barber, or Professor Barber. And once more we are going into this divide, prioritize, and marginalize. And of all of you that are familiar with Derrida and also Heidegger, there is a tendency in Western culture to prioritize time as now, the presence. This is also called logocentrism. Presence is much better than not being present, and that is one of the reasons that writing, already stated by Plato, was not as good as talking, because talking is not only, this is not only space, but it's also closer in time. So I am talking now because I am here, but also it's in a now. So that's a division between what is now and what happened. And then we have a prioritization, and that with prioritization, or whatever it's called, is the present. Present is fantastic. Present is full of life, and if you read the book Dissemination, you know it's a disseminated instance is much more important. I put my meaning into the words by standing here in front of you now, and therefore the words get seminated by my presence, or this presence I should say even. And then there is a marginalization of what is not present. That is old, that disappears, that's something bad. It's really a scapegoat, even more so than empty space or unequal paths. It's been hunted all history, all philosophical history. What is not present is no good at all. It's old matter. It's the past. Julian Barber puts quite another idea into this, and he says that there is no time and there is no happening. Therefore, there is no present, so to speak. So everything is the past and the future. So this is a bit similar to the Derridian concept, or word, one should say, because not really concept, of archewriting, the original writing. It's a way of deconstructing the idea of presence being the only thing worthwhile. And of course, no time is apeiron. It's the thing that is both the nil situation, the thing that is nothing, neither nothing, neither something. But I'd say it's also the middle energy between heaven and earth. What do I mean by that? Well, if you remember Julian Barber, he has something called shape space, and that is a more or less accepted idea of how things happen in the universe. Remember the Wheeler-de Wit equation. I will not put it on the whiteboard, it's too hard to memorize. I tried late last night. But it doesn't have time, it doesn't have space. And that means there is a progress of things in something that is already, so to speak, established. Usually referred to as the diamond. And this reservoir of moments, where all moments already exist, so to speak, and what is the progression of time is just the different objects, so to speak. The shapes even, it's not even objects, it's shapes. And they have a series that's based on similarity. And this is something we usually explain with this caricature that we made in school, maybe a thin figure that moved around like this, and the similarity made up the progression and the felt time. And remember, you could do these papers rather fast, you can do them slow, and that's a different progression in time. And of course you understand there is no actual time going on there. So time seemed to be a thing of the past in Julian Barber's insights. One could also say that no time is the brother or twin of time. So no time is this discarded, not very liked cousin in the country that you never visit. The thing you don't want to have in the house, like dirt, rats, flies. The thing that you discard and see as being menial, lower, that is no time. And Julian Barber actually put his foot down in the defense of no time, which I think is quite fantastic in itself. How could we describe no time? Well, you find some descriptions in the end of time, but I'm going to add some more. It could be a pause. It could also be a break from the activities you are doing. It could also be a nothing. Doing nothing, nothing is happening at all. Stand still. One could even say that death could be a no time. We usually, in our own Newtonian ideas, perceive that the no time of death, it's a really bad thing. You don't want to be there in nothingness of time. Not only nothingness of space, but it's also a nothingness of time. And this is, of course, the thing we dread more than anything else. That's the apeiron. So it's a picture that is getting depicted here of a relationship, so to speak, and it's close to the relationship we often mention in the mornings with the Surya Namaskara, the moon and the earth, or the moon and the sun, in contrast to the earth and the moon. In between seem to be where everything is happening, and in between doesn't have a name. In between is not a concept, but it's the force in between the two things. And I see this as prana, actually, the progression. What is similarity? Because similarity is much more, it's a harder nut to crack than one thinks in the beginning. What actually is similarity in shape space? Because usually the models we used 2-3 years ago were triangles, and they're very easy to understand. But it's not so easy when you really get into it. It's a small difference, and you start to think, aha, that wasn't so easy as I thought, which is good. If I would understand from the beginning how complicated, not complicated, but different it was, it would have been too high a wall to climb. It would be impossible. So I'm glad that I was spared that insight at the time, because I would have given the whole project up directly. But now I see that similarity is a force in itself. This is what is doing the progression. And I would call this prana. And as Julian Barber often says, that I am not the same person as I was when I woke up. You remember we have this Newtonian idea of a continuity. Here we need time as well. And a continuity is, it exists in this moment, it exists in this moment. You're thinking of a thing passing here. So there is a permanence over time. It is being the identical thing. And remember what we said before, there are no identity in the universe. No things are identical. And that, at that time, was something that applied to space. There are no similar, or rather identical, atoms. But this is important. There are no identical things over time either. And this is Julian Barber's point. This is what he means by saying, I am not the same person that woke up. You are not the same person from instance to instance. So the identity law doesn't hold over time either. And this is a very important clue to understand why this is the thing instead. The reason, I would say, looking at Julian Barber on a video or somebody else, and I say that person is identical, is because of similarity. And that also holds for progression in time, how I perceive it. How could you have progression in time if you didn't have similarity? Because here you have a whiteboard, there you have a chair. I would never be able to make out time. Something developing from a whiteboard going into be a chair. But whereas my colleague Kalle standing here could be said to be the same person from my perspective. What am I saying? Well, I say there is a big likeness between Kalle a moment ago and Kalle now, and Kalle maybe in 2 seconds. This is how we start to make out time in the Newtonian sense. But Kalle is not the same. Kalle cannot be the same. Instead, we have this development, and rather it is our intention that chooses in between the myriads of possible moments in time. And every possible moment in time is a shape space that's built on similarity, and the progression is our own intention. Our intention does take a quite significant part in Julian Barber. Actually, it's everything. So a defender of Newton could say, well, you change time into intention. Well, in some ways that's actually true. It's a true accusation. It's something being elected, chosen at every time. And that could be a hint to understand. Remember, what is the case when it comes to Newtonian reality and choice? It's not. We have determinism in Newtonian. Why do we have determinism? And here comes the elegant point, because we have time. Time is used, so to speak, in the Newtonian coordinate system to get rid of intention. You have time instead. And there, of course, you get determinism. You don't have any free will anymore. That's, you see, if you start a system with that, you get some gains, but you also get some losses. And the losses, that was intention, free will, that was more or less accepted by Newton. And we had to accept it because for us it was just reality. Free will takes the place of time. And why is that? Well, obviously, your intention is a part of shape space. How your body, how your brain is formed in each instance will decide what will be the next instance. And you would say, well, that would be very, very small. Be incredibly small. Could be a little neuron in your head, could be something quantum effect in your head, very, very small. Well, it still makes a change. Every little microscopical thing makes a change in shape space. It will actually choose another moment. And those two moments will not be the same. So whether you like it or not in quantum mechanics, choice comes in. And that could be a good thing to remember. Whether you like it or not, you don't have the choice not to have a choice anymore. That option is only within Newton, to give up choice. So I think this could be another way of approaching both Newton and Julian Barber, and that this is actually what Julian Barber does in the book The End of Time. You understand Newton much better, you also understand what he is suggesting. And I think the marvelous thing with The End of Time is that understanding of Newton will not come if you haven't read the book. The book gives that understanding. So that's turned out to be a very important thing in our development, and I think it's a good thing that Julian Barber comes back for a little retour to say hello. The old chap is still alive and he's still as vigorous as ever. That's quite impressive. He's clear as a mountain stream, which is extraordinary for his age. So you see here, similarity is something much more harder to understand. I wouldn't say complex, but you need to think really differently, because in Newton it's very sloppy when it comes to similarity. We use the word identical, and everything else is uninteresting. If it's not identical in Newton, it's not interesting. In quantum mechanics, in Julian Barber, similarity is everything, not identical. And similarity, it's much more to think about. What is similarity? It's not that easy to understand directly. But remember, as I said, even a little neuron change will choose another shape space. That will be another moment. Will definitely be another moment. Will not be the same. So every choice, that could be horrendous. I read somebody on the internet, he said, yeah, I'm being shocked. That this means that every little choice I do, what doesn't matter if I pick my nose or scratch my hand or think a stupid thought, what happened about 55 years ago in the vicinity of Liverpool or something like that, whatever. Yes, in shape space, everything will change the moment. And it's no good to say those moments are similar. They're not. It's a whole different line. actually they can cause an enormous change. You see, chaos theory is lurking around the corner here as well. Could actually mean that the earth disappears just because I didn't lace my shoes. They do not happen by themselves, the moments. It's not like in Newton, we only need a timeline, and then you say for some reason time happens by itself, because I wrote that. I draw that timeline. No, here time is much more active, if we even can talk about time. I wouldn't. I would say prana or ki or chi instead. It's the force, our intention, that brings us to the next moment. And we have this billion and billions and billions to choose from in this happening diamond. This force could also be called the deciding power. And that is also most obvious from the findings of Badre. Because we've forgotten about the executive function. That's the choosing function. Which of all the options within the brain, if we want to talk about the brain as Badre does, but it still holds. Think of the brain as a big reservoir of actions. Actions that you train yourself into, and for each moment you have to choose one of those actions, ready-made. There's a lot of them, but they're not infinite. There's a lot of them, probably millions of them, but you choose every single second which of these actions to take. And this is the executive function that's placed in the frontal lobes. And this is what disappears if you have a stroke or some problems with your frontal lobes. Because you will be able to talk in the same way. You will also be able, well, pretty much be able to say what you're going to plan. You can also say it out loud, I'm going to do this and that. To a certain extent you can do that. Enough so nobody could discover it for at least 60 years in neurology. 60 years! And now we understand. The electing power is what makes things happen. That is you choosing which action, and this is also important. We have special neural cells in our head that says no. So you have something similar to no time, because no action means also no time. Could even be that the no neural cells, NO, they are more important than the yes ones. Because you have this huge reservoir of actions, and to make one action possible, you need to stop other actions. And what happens if you don't do that? The action taken will be weaker or maybe not even executed. In competition between two or usually three actions, that action that comes into life will be weakened. Or when more than three actions come at the same time, which is very, very common, it could be that a fourth action is being chosen randomly by itself, and that's a lack of prana. And he actually mentioned that it seems to be a lack of energy in the person, and that seemed to be a bigger problem with the people who had sort of a brain injury in these parts. It is that they're doing a lot of things at the same time. They don't come in any order, so the stopping signal is gone, because the reservoir of actions is sort of lower down in the region, and that's still being saved. That's why we still can talk about the actions, but we can't stop enough of other actions to help only one action come to life. It's a little bit like the moment of well, the birth movement, the very first movement, is 1 billion of sperms going into the egg. Only one can enter. And the idea is that this is similar. This is 1 million of action. And all but one need to be stopped. And that is something that's been taken care of the frontal cortex. And it's also something that is trained for the whole life. You do get better in this area by training. And I think this is neurology, of course, but this is very close to prana. Everything I heard about prana is like this. And it's a lot of talking about no time here. No time meaning doing nothing. And whereas in the West we see doing nothing as a bad thing, nothing happens, that work won't be done if you don't do anything. In the Eastern sphere, India, already China, no action is very important. Why is that? Well, in the no action, from a neurological perspective, if you put it in Badra, you are actually trained to say no. And that is the most important skill to have successful action. Otherwise, competing actions will play their own game and you will not be able to choose which of the gazillions of actions you have stored in your brain or your consciousness or in your movement that will come into life. So that's a very strong case for no time, not doing anything. And if you go to Eastern country, you will see people often being engaged in doing exactly nil and nothing. This complete standstill. And you wonder what they're doing. What they are doing is learning how to stop. Maybe the most important trait we have. It's a little bit similar to, not a lot, a little bit similar to the idea that Heidegger wants to put instead of the Newtonian / Descartesian Amnesian / way of seeing the world is compromised by things out there and not participating in a dual force of doing and non-doing, alatea antea. And in this double action, reality comes. You can compare reality, the presencing in Heidegger, you can compare that in neurology to the finished action, the action you actually do, what happens. And it will be very decisive when it comes to the quality of the action. Because if you cannot stop, the quality will lower. And I saw a yogi once who did siddhis. Siddhis, I would say, it's an advanced skill of not doing anything. Because a siddhi could mean you can stop your heart almost. But he could go down to a heart rate of 8 or 9. He was scared to feel his pulse. But he was also able to do quite other things that I thought had nothing to do with stopping anything. But I know understands that his incredible balance, for instance, he could walk on a rope, that is caused by his stopping effect. Because he's stopping a lot of other actions that would bring him out of balance. And this is the actual skill. Because none of us has any less than 1 billion of action. Because you learn so much action when you are small. Actually, you learn to learn action already as a fetus in the womb of your mother. It could even be, and I am a proponent for that, and I won't mention that today, but I actually think we have ingrained actions already by conception, already done there. I do not believe in blank slate, and I think there is a lot of action already ingrained in our system. Where? It's very hard to say, but Badra seem to be of the same view. We just started this thing, so we don't know where it is. Could be in the movement, but it is quite obvious somewhere. There is a lot of ingrained action already at conception. That's my view. Okay, I think that's quite enough about no time. Felt really good to have Julian Barber around us once more, and there will be another lecture by him before the end of this little session. Okay, I say thank you very much, and I wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye.
Thank you.